Hi guys, my name is Arya and I welcome you all to this Flutter tutorial. Now before we jump into the video, let me just go ahead and give you guys a brief introduction to the topics I intend to cover today. So first of all, we will be talking about mobile application development and how it is done, what it is. Then we will look into the spotlight matter for today, and that is Flutter. So we will be discussing what exactly is Flutter and why you should learn it. Moving ahead, we'll be discussing the architecture that makes up Flutter, the types of widgets that Flutter uses, and how Flutter compiles. In the end, I will show you guys how to install Flutter on your Windows system, and then we will be writing a very simple application using Flutter itself. Okay, so let's get started. So the first topic for today is the world of mobile application development. Now, as you guys know, the world today is kind of divided into iOS and Android. Now, iOS and Android take up around 99% of the market share when it comes to mobile phone applications and mobile phone systems. Now, they both are actually rival companies, and as you guys know, Apple or iOS is developed by Apple and Android is developed by Google. But the story is not the same for a software developer who is targeting mobile applications. Because for a software developer, when he develops an app and he wants it to be successful, he would want it to run on both systems, be given Android and iOS take up 99% of the shares. So what you want to do is you want to write an app that will run on both systems. And that is pretty much prevalent in today's norms. You see that there's Google Maps for Android, there's Google Maps for iOS, there's even Apple Maps for Google and Apple Maps for iOS. There are a lot of mobile applications that run on both platforms. And most of the times, to improve performance, companies will try and go for the native approach. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say native approach, you might want to go and watch my introduction to mobile application development video, which we talk about Appium, which is a testing framework, and the world of mobile application development. So just to give you guys a gist, we normally have three kinds of applications: web, hybrid, and native. Now, if you want an application to be performance specific and have no sort of performance issues and should be able to access all of the hardware features and all the software can be optimized to the T, so that is the time when you go for a native approach. Mostly a native approach costs a lot of money, and this is because you need to hire two different teams to write applications for Android and iOS when they are taking the native approach. For example, if you're writing a native app for iOS, you will be needing a Swift developer, and if you want the same app to actually run on Android, you will need a Java developer, somebody who is proficient at Android development. So basically what you are doing out here, you are spending twice the amount of money for the same app just so that it can run on two different application platforms. Now, this has become quite a big problem for smaller industries and startups where they want an app to run on both platforms and they end up not having so much money. That is the time they go for the hybrid approach. Now, in a hybrid approach, you mostly have one code base that works on both platforms, that is given Android and iOS. But normally, the performance of the app takes a hit in this measure. So this has become a problem for most startups and smaller companies because they would be spending a lot of money on applications just so that they can run on both platforms and they have a bigger scope of a crowd to approach to. Now, this is mostly because of three reasons. So the first reason is an SDK. Now, on Android and iOS both, different SDKs or software development kits are used for the development of an application. Now, a software development kit is typically just a set of software tools and development tools that allow the creation of applications and software packages with a lot of ease. Now, these are different from frameworks, and I will explain how frameworks are different because framework contains more than just an SDK. Now, moving on, they have different SDKs. Above that, they have different frameworks because they come from different SDKs. So you don't really have one true framework so that you can develop an app using that framework and it will work on both platforms. So this is quite missing in the industry today. So this brings about a general lack of uniformity in today's mobile application development world. So if there's a developer who's starting out in his career and he wants to develop an app that runs on both Android and iOS, he will have to spend a lot of time just developing the app itself instead of doing the nitty-gritties like maintenance and actually optimizing it. So even for those nitty-gritties, he is going to spend a lot of time because both the application platforms work very differently. For example, in iOS, Bluetooth behaves differently than in Android. Keeping these things in mind, we could say that there is a general lack of uniformity in case of SDKs and frameworks when it comes to mobile application development. So to solve these problems, as usual, Google has come up with a solution, and that solution is called Flutter. So let's take a moment to discuss what exactly is Flutter now. So this is the spotlight topic for today, and this is what our entire video is going to be based on. So what exactly is Flutter? Well, Flutter is a software development kit and framework that is made by Google for the creation of 2D mobile applications. So if you want any sort of 3D game that will run on an Android or iOS device, Flutter is not what you should be learning right now. You should be learning something else. On the other hand, if you are trying to create a 2D application that runs on both iOS and Android, Flutter is certainly the way to go. So Flutter is a software development kit, and it is made on the language Dart. So Dart is the main language used around which the framework is built. So the framework is basically a set of general tools that help you with the whole mobile application development process. To give an analogy of a framework, let's say you cook breakfast every day in the morning. Now, to cook breakfast, you need a lot of things. You need your vegetables, you need your proteins, that can be chicken or eggs, and you need your cooking oil. And all of this is normally spread around in your house. And there's also the process of actually cooking that whole thing. Now, suppose all your breakfast items would come to you in a box every day at your doorstep. So suppose your bacon came to you in a box with a bottle of milk, and you got a loaf of bread, you got some butter, and you also got some vegetables to just throw on the grill. So when all of these things come to you in a box in a unified manner, you can call that as a framework. Now put the same analogy in a mobile application development way. So think of something like you need a search bar. So something to make a search bar already exists in a framework. All you have to do is write down that piece of code which is already there, and your search bar is just ready to go. It just makes the whole development process a lot more easy. Now, the main USP of Flutter at this moment is that you have one single code base for both iOS and Android devices, and they both act as native apps. So acting as native apps is not suppose the right way to say it. They are native apps. They work natively on Android and iOS, and we will understand how. So first of all, let's go and understand why learn Flutter in today's varied world. Now, today we have a lot of other frameworks. So Flutter is not the only framework out there that does the whole cross-platform gimmick. There's also Kotlin, where you can write client and server-side code using one language, and it is a lot like JavaScript. So what exactly is going for Flutter? Well, the first thing is the whole motto that one for all and all for one. So Flutter allows you to develop and create native applications for both iOS and Android. But as I just said, this is not the first framework to do it. There have been a few, but they haven't had the success. So what's so different about Flutter? Well, for one, Google is using it. And when you know Google is using something, you can say that framework or software or tool has a lot of credibility going for it. Another selling point of Flutter is its easy learning curve. So Flutter has been heralded as a very easy framework to learn. Even if you are a beginner that is starting out his career in mobile development, Flutter is definitely the way to go, because that will give you one framework that you can use to build both iOS and Android apps. So just think about the doors of opportunities that you are opening for yourself. You can apply for iOS jobs, you can apply for Android jobs, and you can do it just from the get-go without learning Swift or Java. And personally, for me, Java has always been a pain to learn and master because I find it extremely systematic as a programming language. And if you don't want to go through that whole hell of an experience of learning Java, you can just learn Flutter and use it on Android development and on iOS development too. So on the other hand, if you are a person with some experience in mobile application development, it will only be more easy for you to learn because it says that you have some experience with object-oriented programming and mobile application development as a whole. The third point that is why you should learn Flutter is because in today's competitive world, it makes your resume shine. So somebody who is actually hiring a developer for his or her company so that he can build an app. Now, according to the norms of today, the person might want the app to run on both the platforms. So if he sees Flutter on your resume, he'll know that you can write both apps for Android and iOS, and this will not take a hit on the performance of the app. So this only makes your resume a whole lot more brighter and shinier in the eyes of somebody who is going to employ you. Okay, so those were three great reasons that you should definitely try and learn Flutter. Now let's move on with our topic of discussion today. So the next topic of discussion in this video is going to be Flutter's architecture. Okay, so now let's take a deeper look into how Flutter works and let's discuss its architecture. So first of all, on the left-hand side of the screen, what you see is an app made using Flutter. While it's a GIF, it is basic. Let's imagine that it uses Flutter. Now, when an app is made using Flutter, it actually uses something that is called as a widget tree. So everything that you see on the app or the app itself can be considered as a widget. Now, the other elements that go along with the widget, like the menu section, the select sections, the different buttons, the drop-down menus, all of them also form widgets. So basically what you get in the end is a widget tree. Now, the main app will be the parent widget for everything else. Then it just spawns different children. And these children can be of different types of widgets, and we'll get to that later. But for now, all you have to understand is that whenever app is made using Flutter, it is basically a collection of widgets, and it looks something like this, which is basically called a widget tree. Now, moving forward, one might think that widgets are not exactly the best way to go around and using for a design layout or for a design performance. Well, Google actually disagrees with that, and they have also given you way to actually embrace the platform differences using the widget tree. So when I mean platform differences, I mean the differences that lay in iOS and Android both. Now, while apps might perform the same way and act the same way on both the platforms, how they actually interact with the hardware services like the Bluetooth, the speakers, everything is completely different. So you have different APIs that are called and handled for these different services. And the best part about Flutter's architecture is that it has those, let's call them blank spaces in the framework so that you can put them yourself and you can develop and have an app that has complete control over the applications and its behaviors, regardless if it runs on Android and iOS both. Now let's take a look at the different types of widgets that we have. So first of all, Flutter has two types of widgets. So the first one is called the stateful widget and the other is called the stateless widget. So whenever you are making an app, you are going to be using a combination of stateful and stateless widgets. These are the two kind of widgets, and they form a majority of the UI elements like search bars, buttons, invisible boxes, just boxes for layout purposes. Everything is either a stateful widget or a stateless widget. So let's go and see what exactly these two are and how they are different from each other. So a stateful widget is basically one that can be changed whenever the app is running. So it has the ability to be changed dynamically. So this means stateful widgets are mutable and can be drawn multiple times within its lifetime. So this could be something like a weather card. Now, a weather card actually changes throughout the day if you are using Google's Android service called Google Now, which shows you the weather in a quick draw, and you can see that it is shown in a card-like fashion. Now, if you are using this feature every day, you will see that the weather gets updated more often than not. So how is that possible? Well, if you're using Flutter, that will be a stateful widget because that is changing all the time. On the other hand, stateless widgets are the complete opposite. Stateless widgets are immutable once built, and to draw a stateless widget, you will need to create a new instance of that widget itself. So suppose, let's say the card in itself is a stateless widget because the shape of the card is not really changing while the content is changing. So the content can be put in a nested widget inside a stateful widget, and that can be, I'm sorry, so I mean to say that when you are imagining a weather card, the outer card could be a stateless widget as the shape of the widget is not changing. It is only being drawn once, while the contents of the card could be in an invisible stateful widget inside, and they can be mutable from time to time. So these are the two kinds of widgets that you get with Flutter, and these are the types of widgets that you are going to play around with. Now let's take a look into how Flutter codes actually compile into native codes. Now, most of the people, when I say that Flutter code actually compiles into native code, get really confused as to how this is exactly possible. So, well, let's take a look into how Flutter actually compiles its codes. So at the center of all the service, you have your Dart code, which basically makes up your widgets and the code of your software or your program or your application, whatever you'd like to call it, is being used by the Dart code or is being used and being built on the Dart code itself. Aside from that, now after the Dart code, you have the Flutter API that sits on the Dart code. Now the Flutter API provides you with an ease of development process. This lets you create your widgets, your stateful widgets, your stateless widgets, and decides how you are going to shape up the whole UI in a much more uniform and systematic fashion. So it basically gives you utility and widgets. Now this Dart code is then compiled into ARM binaries, which is both understood by iOS and Android. So basically, you are not going down and using a specific up and down compiler to get different codes for different systems. What you do is basically just compile them into ARM binaries, which is understood by both platforms, and this is done by the Flutter SDK. So this allows you to actually write Dart code that can run on both iOS and Android. And as we have already discussed, the Flutter framework gives you enough flexibility to actually tackle all sorts of changes that might be there in both the platforms. So that was all about Flutter and what it is and why you should learn it. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how you can install Flutter on your own system. Okay, so it's time that we look at how you can install Flutter on your Windows system. So to install Flutter, first of all, open up your browser and go to flutter.dev. So this is the site where all the news about Flutter is going to be available. You can go and see the docs out here. You can see the community and what it looks like. And it also has a whole get started guide out here. Now, out here, you have to go and click on get started, and first of all this will direct you to the installation page. Now all you have to do is click on Windows, and this will come and show you the system requirements and what you need to do to actually install Flutter on your system. So out here, to install and run Flutter, your development environment must meet these minimum requirements. So first of all, we need operating systems, that is Windows 7, SP1 or later, and we need a disk space of around 400 MB, and this does not include the disk space for IDE and tools, and we'll get to the IDE part later. And for tools section, Flutter depends on these tools for being available in your environment. So first of all is Windows PowerShell 5 or newer, and the second one is Git. So to install Git, all you have to do is go ahead and click on that link, and that should go ahead and show you your Git download page. So I already have Git installed on my computer and the path already set. If you don't have that, you can go ahead and see that in a separate YouTube video and how to install and set up Git. But for now, I'm just going to discard this. So for now, what we have out here is we need Git and we need Windows PowerShell 5. So go ahead and install those both. So let's read up on how to get the Flutter SDK. So first of all, we need to download the Flutter zip file that is there. So let's go ahead and download that. So let's download this, and that will be the Flutter SDK. So you see that this is a following installation bundle to get the latest stable release of Flutter. For other releases and older, you can go for the SDK archive. So the second thing that we need to do is extract the zip file and place the contained Flutter in a desired installation location. It says that we should not put it in a directory like program files because that requires elevated privileges. And to locate the Flutter file, we have to actually go ahead and hit the flutter console.bat. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually see how we can do that. So let's wait for this thing to download up. Now on the IDE side of things, I would recommend that you go ahead and download Android Studio on your system. Downloading Android Studio is pretty simple. If you have some trouble downloading Android Studio, you can go ahead and look at my Appium installation, because during Appium installation we also go ahead and install Android Studio. But just in case you don't feel like watching a new video for this particular thing, all you have to do is go to developers.android.com/studio, which can be easily reached by just Googling Android Studio on your favorite browser. Now, once you open the page, the first thing that you will see is this big, huge Android Studio download button. All you have to do out here is agree to the terms and condition, which nobody probably reads. And then all you have to do is click on download. Now, I don't really want this file because I already have it installed, so I'm going to discard that. But for now, let's concentrate on the spotlight for today, and that is Flutter. So as we can see, we have this downloaded, and as you guys can see, I had already previously downloaded it, and this is the one out here, and that can be unzipped into this file. Once you have unzipped the file, you will get this folder called Flutter Windows version 1.2.1 stable. In this, what you have to do is go ahead, wait, I'll just decompress this and show it to you. So all you have to do is use your decompressing software. I have 7-zip and I'm going to use that. So let's just decompress it and see what we get. So let this process run, and I'll be back with you guys as soon as this process has finished. Okay, so now that we have extracted our folder, we see that we have a Flutter folder in the folder that we extracted it to. And according to our instructions that we read on the installation page, what we are supposed to do is go ahead and click this. Now, out here you see a bunch of other instructions. So use the console below this message to interact with the Flutter command. So what you want to do out here is run Flutter Doctor to check if your system is ready to run Flutter apps. And once that is done, all you have to do is run Flutter create an app name. So that's very simple. Now, if you want to run Flutter commands from any command prompt or PowerShell window, all you have to do is go ahead and set your path. So to set your path, all you have to do is go ahead and put this folder into any place that you would want. Now, I could just put this folder here, but what you have seen is that I normally put my folders in my E drive. So out here, if you see, I have the Flutter folder, and all you have to do is go into the bin folder and copy this out here, copy the address, go into this PC, click on properties, and click on advanced system settings and environment variables. And all you have to do out here is go into path under system variables. So that can be found out here. Go into edit, and all you have to do is put in the bin folder's address out here. So as you guys can see, I've already done it here, and you can do this yourself by actually copying down the address. So that will actually put your Flutter bin folder's address into your system variable so that your system understands that Flutter is a command that should be understood by your system. Okay, so that sets up for setting the environment. Now, all you have to do to see if you are ready to run Flutter or Flutter applications, all you have to do is go ahead into your command prompt, and all you have to do is go ahead and run the command Flutter Doctor. Now, as you guys can see out here, when I run Flutter Doctor, oh god, I'm running the same thing again. So if I go ahead and run Flutter Doctor, it gives me this doctor summary. So this doctor summary tells us the required things that you might require for running a Flutter app. So as you guys can see, I have the Flutter channel and the Flutter SDK installed. There's also the Android toolchain. I do not have an Android license status because that's unknown. I have Android Studio installed, and there's no connected devices. So the doctor has found 2 issues in this category, but those issues are not really very major, but all you need is mostly Android Studio and the Flutter SDK. So if you didn't have anything other than these, Doctor would tell you what other things you require for Flutter to be actually running on your system. So another thing you can do is create Flutter apps using the Flutter command. So let's go into our desktop. So once we are in the desktop, we can go ahead and say Flutter create, let's say, demo. So we are going to name our application demo. So let's go ahead and hit enter, and this will go ahead. Demo is not a valid Dart package name to use lower score. So let's see, we can do demo, and this should go ahead and create our Flutter app that will be ready to run. Now we will be editing this app ourselves, and we are going to make our first app using this. So on the Android Studio side, you also want to make sure that you have a few plugins that are there for your Flutter application and your Flutter development to go seamlessly. So let's go ahead and look at those. So once Android Studio loads up, you will see that I have a separate option that says I can create a new Flutter project. So I'll teach you guys how you can actually get that. So let's just wait for this to load up. Okay, so it seems like my Android Studio is loading up a separate project. So let's go ahead and see that. So let's close this tip box, and let's also close this. Okay, so we don't want to actually exit Android Studio, but what we want to do is open. So what we have to do is go ahead and go to Artipol and go to desktop. Out here you will see that there is a demo app, and if we open that, let's open it in this window. So this app is a basic app that comes preloaded whenever you make a Flutter app. Now what I want to draw your attentions to is you have to go into File and then into Settings, and out here you have to download a few plugins before you actually go ahead and start developing your Flutter apps. So out here you go into Plugins and you go into Browse Repositories, and out here all you have to do is go ahead and search for Flutter. So out here you see that this is Flutter, and you can go ahead and download that. Now I have already downloaded that, so it's not showing me a green download button, so it would show you something like that. And other than Flutter, you also have to include Dart. So I already have the Dart plugin installed, so it is also not showing me that install buttons, but if you were to actually install it, it would show you a green plugin button like this. I mean a green install button like this. So all you have to do is go ahead and do the repositories and install the plugin for Dart and for Flutter. Okay, so that would set up your Android Studio for writing your first Flutter application. So now let's go ahead and see how our first Flutter application actually looks like. So out here, if I actually go into Tools and go into ABD, so let's go into ABD Manager and let's start up our virtual device. So you need an emulator or a virtual device to actually run and test your apps. And we are going to be using Android Studio just because it gives us this whole ABD feature. Now let's go ahead and turn this on. Now what you see out here, let's go ahead and see this is the main.dart file. And if you go into project and let's go into packages, so demo, and we have this main.dart file. So this is the part where your code is written for most of your apps. For today's simple application, we will be writing our code in the main.dart file. And this is not going to be a very complex application. It is just to make you apply what you have learned today. That is how you can install Flutter and make a couple of widgets like a stateful widget and a stateless widget, and see how Flutter runs both on Android and iOS. So let's see if our emulator has started. Okay, so we see that the boot logo has come up. So let's just wait for the UI to start up. Okay, so now that our emulator has started up, what you see out here is Android phone that is being emulated right now. So this is a Pixel 2 model, and the model doesn't really matter out here as much as the API version. So we are currently running Android 8 out here. So my purpose of actually booting up this emulator is to show you how a Flutter app looks like when it is actually run. So what we can do out here is go ahead and press this run button, and this will go ahead and out here, even if you were go to the terminal section out here, all you could do is go ahead and say flutter run, and this would start up your app on your emulator. So as you guys can see, this will give you a summary on the processes that it will run while actually starting up the app. And let's see what goes on in the app right now. So let's just see what's going to happen. Now, this is not going to be a complex app, and we will build upon this app just to show how Flutter works. So today we are going to be actually making a random word generator with somewhat of an infinite scroll. But before that, let me actually wait for this run command to actually be executed. Okay, so that seems to have failed because our Gradle is still being assembled. Now that our Gradle has been assembled, I see the process out here has actually stopped. So let's see. So there seems to be some sort of error. We should actually go ahead and resolve that. So let me just go ahead and run this command once again. Okay, so as you guys can see, our screen has gone white on our emulator at this moment. So let's just wait for the app to pop up. So as the summary is going, it's apparently installing the build and the APK to our system. So our system UI isn't responding at this moment, so we can just go ahead and click the wait option, and that should normally go ahead and dismiss that. For now, let's see if our app pops up. Now, this is generally taking a lot more time because I haven't actually given so much memory to my 𝐂𝐽𝐻 emulator. So let's see if it actually pops up without me actually going and fiddling with the memory settings. So it seems like it will pop up as it's syncing the files. Okay, so it seems that our Flutter app is running somehow, but this is taking a lot more time than expected to actually load up. Okay, so it seems like I have ended the connection to the app. Right, that also should have. So let's go ahead and do a Flutter run again. Okay, so as you guys can see, after running Flutter run on our terminal, we have popped up the Flutter app onto our emulator. Now, as you guys can see out here, this is a very basic app, and if I go ahead and press this button out here, why isn't this getting pressed? If you go ahead and press that button out there, the counter of the button actually goes up, and we can see that being represented in the code somewhere out here. So we see that a counter has been set out here, which is int counter equals to 0, and every time we are going to set a state, and that is going to be counter plus plus. Now what we want to do out here, let's see. Now let me show you a cool thing about Flutter, and that is called a hot reload. Now if I were to go to this counter part and do equals to counter plus 2, now out here I could just go ahead and press R, and that will actually go ahead and hot reload my entire app. Now let the hot reload commence. Now if you see, I pressed the button once and it went up to 14, and if I press the button again it goes up to 16. So as you guys can see, changes in your code with a hot reload are reflected almost instantaneously in your app. So that's a great thing about Flutter. Now the final part of today's presentation is that we are going to try and install and run our own simple Flutter application. So to do that, let's go back to our Android Studio project, and we are going to write our own piece of code. So this piece of code, or as you might say application, is going to be an application for generating words. So we are basically going to build a word generator using Flutter today. So what we are going to do first is basically, let's remove all this code from here first of all, right? Now what we want to do is we are going to write our own piece of code. So for that, just follow along and I'll try and explain what I'm doing, because this is a very introductory video to Flutter, and if this video gets a lot of appreciation, we are going to produce a Flutter playlist which will actually go into the in-depths of the entire framework. So just hang on and try to follow along as to what I'm doing. So first of all, we are going to actually create a Flutter app. Now, so the first thing that you want to do is going to main.dart under the lib folder and delete all the code that is there. Now, we are going to be making a word generator. So I'm going to be driving you down the code line by line. So first of all, we need to import a certain package, and that package is called, and this is how you import packages in Flutter. All you have to say is package, and the first import package is package flutter material.dart. And since I have my plugin ready, that is my Flutter plugin and the Dart plugin, this is being so much easier. Now what we want to say is void main, and we want to open and close the brackets, and then we want to say run app. So run app, and this will say my app. Fine. So this is the basic command that you would put into any Flutter application so that your app gets started. Now all you have to say is class my app, and the same way that you spelled it in the second line, and you're going to make this extends. So you make it extend something by saying extends, and you say stateless. So this is going to be a stateless widget, so we can go ahead and select that, and we say stateless widget. And now what we want to do is open our parentheses, and now what we want to say is something important. We want to say this will override every single widget that is built into this class. So the first widget that we are going to build is going to be with the build function. So we say widget build, and what you see out here is a basic widget that has been built for us. But what we want to do is not exactly going to be so basic. So we want to return null, and that's not what we want to do. So what we want to do is return a material. So we want to return a material app. So to return a material app, you could say something like a title of the app. So title would be, let's say, welcome to my first application. Okay, now out here we also want to set up the home. So for home, all we want to say is we have to define a home, and once we define a home, we can put a scaffold. As now a scaffold is just an element you will learn in future videos, and I'll go into the details of all these elements. So what we want to say is this is our scaffold. Now what we want to do is build an app bar. Now the app bar is also going to be built with the app bar function, and now you say app bar, and all you have to do is put in the title of the app bar, and in the title we could give a welcome text. So we could say something like text, and we could say again, let's put something like welcome to my first application. Now that should put up a title. And now in the center, I would like to also show a hello world. So outside of the app bar, so this is the app bar. Now we come into the scaffold. So we go to the app bar and we want to create a body. Now our body is going to be in the center. So let's see center, and center should pop up. And what do you want to say in center? We want to create a child. Remember, everything is a widget. So what we want to say is this is going to be a child widget, and it will show a text. And in this piece of text, what we want to say is hello world. So once that piece of text has actually been done, we want to go into material app, and we want to put a semicolon out there so that everything ends properly. Let's see, this ends here and this ends here. So what we want to do now is go into our terminal and press a hot reload. Now let's go into our app, and as you guys can see, we have a nice little scaffold going out here, and it says welcome to my first application. And if you were to zoom in out here, it says hello world. So as you guys can see, we wrote a little bit of code, and this has started transforming our application into something that we want. So what we have out here is hello world. Now the next step, what we want to do is run the app. So we've done that. So the scaffold widget from the material library provides a default app bar, title, and the body property that holds the widget tree for the home screen. So the widget tree can be quite complex at times, but for now we are going to be keeping it real simple. Now the widget's main job is to provide a build function method, and that is the build method that we just saw, and that describes how to display the widget in terms of other lower level widgets. And the body for this example consists of a center widget containing a text child widget, and the center widget aligns itself with the widget subtree to the center of the screen, and that says hello world. Now the next thing that we are going to learn is to use an external package in this application that we are building. So to do that, first we have to go to the pubspec.yaml file. So let's go ahead and open that, and out here you see all sorts of dependencies and stuff going on. So inside the dependencies part, what we want to add is a line. So let's add that line. So this is going to say English words, and the name of the package is basically English words, and we want the version 3.1.0. So that's that, and that's all we want for now. Now let's go back to our main.dart file. Okay, so as you guys can see, we have changed our dependencies, and our IDE already tells us we can get the dependencies. So let's go ahead and click get dependencies. Okay, so it seems that all our dependencies have been fetched. So what we want to do next is import our new package that we just added to our dependency, and we can do that by actually going in and typing the import command again. And what we want to say is, so it's single quotes and package English words dot. As you guys can see, since I've added it in our dependencies, this thing pops up. So that is the next thing that you have to do. Now, another change that we want to do before actually doing our next hot reload is, let's see if our word is actually loading up. So what we want to say out here is in our widget build part. So let's go into our widget build, and what we want to say here is we want a final word pair. So let's see, final. So final is basically like a constant. So final word, and let's see, but let's call it word pair because we are going to be generating a pair of words. It's going to be equals to, so this is the function that comes along with the English word slash English words dot. So English word pair dot random. So word pair dot random is the function that we are going to go for. Now in this child text part, what you want to do is say, let's remove the hello world, and we do not need the semicolons anymore. I mean the single quotes. Now what we want to say is word pair dot as Pascal case. So we want the Pascal case. So as Pascal case basically means as every word will basically begin with a new capital letter. So it's kind of like title case. You can look up what Pascal case means, and that's for your grammar lessons. But for now, let's go ahead and do this hot reload out here. So let's go ahead and press R. So let's go into our terminal and let's go ahead and press R. So that seems that there seems to be an error. So there seems to be that we need to put a semicolon out here, and let's try hot reloading again. Okay, so we need a semicolon after this too. So that was my mistake. Now let's go ahead and hot reload that too. So go into the terminal part and press R, and that will perform a hot reload. So if we go ahead and go into our app, now what we see out here is two little words. So out here it shows, let me just zoom into it. So out here if you see, it says the word web mess. Now if I were to go ahead and hot reload again, it will show me a new word every time. Now this time it says glass crush. So what we have done is basically added new dependency and external package and use it in our app. Okay, so that kind of covers one aspect of what I wanted to show you guys as to how you can import new packages into your existing applications. Now the next thing that we will be doing is adding a stateful widget to our application. So stateless widgets are immutable, meaning that their properties can't change as all final values are final. So stateful widgets maintain state that might change during the lifetime of the widget. Now implementing a stateful widget requires at least two classes. One, a stateful widget class that creates the instance, and the state class. So the stateful widget class is itself immutable, but the state class persists over the lifetime of the widget. So in the step we will be saying how we can add a stateful widget. So let's go ahead and see that. So first of all, we need to create a minimal state class. So we need to add the following code into our main.dart file. So first of all, we will be creating a new class. So out here, what you want to say is, let's see where our class ends. So our class ends there. So we want to add a new class, and this class is going to be called random word state, and it is going to extend. So extends, and it is going to be the state of random words. So we write it like this. So random words. So that's how you do that. Now out here, let's just keep this empty for now. So like that. So we have created a class called class random word state, which extends the state of random words. So notice something about the declaration. It says state and then random words. So this indicates that we are using the generic state class specialized for use with the random words. Most of the app's logic and the state resides here. It maintains the state of the random words widget. So this class saves the generated word pair, which grows infinitely as the user scrolls, and the favorite word pairs if we add that feature of favoriting a word pair. Now we need to add the stateful random words widget to the main.dart file. So the random words widget does a little else beside creating its state. So what we have to do is create a class called random words. So let's go ahead and do that. So class random words, and this will extend stateful widgets. So extends stateful widgets. So out here we want to open up the class and we want to say that it overrides. So @override, and what does it have to override? So random word state. So random word state, and this will create state. So let's see. So we create the state with the create state function. So create state, and this will be new random word state. So new random words state. Fine. So this we have created a new instance of the state that we created right out here. So let's put a semicolon after that. Now, after adding the state class, the ID complains that the class is missing a build method. Let's see. You see out here. So we actually have to add the build method. So out here, what we want to say is widget build. So this is actually missing a build method. So missing concrete implementation of state.build. So what we want to add out here is, let's see, firstly override, and we want to build a widget. So widget build, and while this is returning null, we don't really want to do that. So widget build and build context, so that will return a context object. So what we want to say is final word pair equals to word pair.random. So word pair.random, and what you want to do is return text that says word pair as Pascal case. So word pair dot as Pascal case. So let's not forget to put our semicolons in, as semicolons are necessary in Dart as a language. Now, since we have added this to our state out here, what we want to do is remove this similar commands in our main file. So what we want to remove from here is the final word pair. So let's go ahead and remove that. So let me just quickly select this and delete it out. And we also want to actually go ahead and remove this child out here. Now, instead of this child giving a text, what we want to say is it will give us random words. So random words. So once we do this, we should actually restart the app. So let's go ahead and hit a hot reload, and let's see the changes that have been in our app. Now it's basically the same thing, but all we have done is put in a stateless widget. So each time you save the app and you again hot reload, you are going to see another word go in on there. So out here you see Podkeys, and you saw a different app, a different word the previous time. So now it's time to create an infinite scrolling list view. So in this step, you'll expand the random word state to generate a display a list of word pairings. So as the user scrolls, the list displayed in the list view widget grows infinitely, and the list view builder factory constructor allows you to build a list like that. And this is basically called a lazy scroll. So what we want to do is add a suggestions list to the random word state class. So firstly, let's go there. So out here, what you want to do is add a bunch of suggestions. So we can do this before the override part. So what you want to say out here, final, and let's see, suggestions. Now you can name your variables whatever you want, but I normally name them with an underscore because that's how normally variables are named in the industry. So what you want to say is word pair, and you want to add an array out here. So that is how you would say it. And let's see, and you want to add another variable called bigger font so that we can make the font size bigger. So let's see, bigger font. So out here, what you want to say is constant and text style, if I was not wrong. So let's say style, text style, and you want to say font size is, let's see, font size is 18.0. So that does that. So let's go ahead and end that with a semicolon. So next you will add a build suggestion. So let's go ahead and see how we can add a build suggestion function to the random word state class. So out here, what you want to do is add another widget. So we want to say widget, and we want to build suggestions. So let's call this build suggestions, and let's go ahead and open that up. So if anything is grayed out, don't be worried. It just means that it hasn't been used. So let's go ahead and do that. So build suggestions. So what we want to do is return a list view.builder. So return list view dot builder. Now in this builder, what we want to do is go ahead and create the list that we want to return. So first of all, we need to add some padding. So for padding, we are going to say constant edge insets. So edge inset is basically, I'll cover that up right now. So edge inset. So we want to go for the edge inset dot all, and let's see. So basically it will give padding on all sides. So basically what you would do in HTML and CSS, if you remember, if you were to put 4 different values of padding, that would put in top, right, bottom, and then left. This is basically a shorter way to do that in Dart, and all you have to say is amount of padding you want. So we want 16 padding. Now what we want to say is then item builder. So we want to build an item, so we need an item builder. So say item builder, and out here you put in context and I. So let's see, context and I. Out here, what you want to do after this is remove this, open this up. In item builder, what you want to say is if. So this is how you do if statements in Dart. If I dot is odd, so this will check if it is an odd. So what you want to do if it's odd is return a divider, and if that is not the case, what you want to do is go ahead and put in the final index as I, and then the squaggle backslash and 2. Okay, so that should do it. Let's see. That is the final, and then we also want to run another if statement. So if index is greater than equals to suggestions.length. So suggestions.length. So if it is greater than the suggestion, so that means if you are going more than what is meant to be scrolled, you want to add some more suggestions to it. So we can do that by going suggestions equals to, or rather just say suggestions dot add all, and let's see, generate word pairs, and let's see, we need to put a take function. So take and 10. So we want to take 10. So that should finish this part of the if, and this part of the if was just return divider. And after that, what we want to do is return the build row. So what we want to do is return build row. Why isn't that popping up? So let's see, return build row, and this will be having suggestions of index. Basically, this is how you formulate an array, and you're manipulating it to actually form infinitely scrolling view. So don't forget to put your semicolons. So this should be a semicolon here and here. Okay, so that returns an item builder, and this is the list view builder, and we have to put a semicolon here too, and that ends our class. Okay, so let me just explain a bit. So the item builder callback is called once per suggested word pairing, and places each suggestion into a list style row. For even rows, the function adds a list style row for the word pairing, and for the odd rows, the function adds a divider widget to visually separate the entries. Note that the divider may be difficult to see on smaller devices. Now we add a 1 pixel high divider widget before each row in the list view, and the expression I and the squaggle backslash 2 divides I by 2 and returns an integer. So what you see out here is basically a division operation, and it returns an integer as a result. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4 becomes 0, 1, 2, 2. So 1 by 2 becomes 0, 2 by 2 becomes 1, 3 by 2 becomes 1, 4 by 2 becomes 2, and 5 by 2 becomes 2. So this calculates the number of word pairings in the list view minus the divider widget. So if you reach the end of the available word pairing, then it will generate 10 more and then add them to the suggestions list. So now what we need to do is add a build row function to the random word state. So what we need to do right now is go back to our stateless widget, and what we see out here is that we have returned a scaffold. So in the scaffold we are saying the title, and what we need to do is change the body. And so we change the body by saying, let's put this body out, and the body will be returned by build suggestion. So build suggestions. Okay, so now that we built our list view builder, what we need to do next is go ahead and put in the build row function. So let's see how we can do that. So first of all, what we have to do is go ahead and put in the build row widget. So we do that in the random state class. So random word state, that part. So we all we have to do is say widget. We say widget, and it is going to be called build row. So out here what we say is word pair. So we are getting a word pair, and this is going to be called pair for us. And let's open up the widget class. So out here we want to return a list style, and in list style what we want to say is title is going to be the text, and so in this text we want to basically make it Pascal case. So we say pair dot as Pascal case, and we also say style is basically bigger font. So remember the bigger font that we had set up, so we're going to be using it here. So out here all you want to do is return the style, so you want to put a semicolon out here, and that builds our row. So in the random, so with build row, this is how you are going to do it. Now in the random word state class, we have to update the build method to use the build suggestions. So we want to use our build suggestions in the build part of our random words generator stateless class. So what we want to do is go ahead and put in the following piece of code in our build part. So let's go ahead and find the build. So this is random word state and this is the build part. So let's go ahead and delete this. So what we want to do is basically return a scaffold, and a scaffold is, as I just said, it is an app bar. So it basically has space for your app bars. Let's go ahead and edit that out. So app bar, and in the app bar we want to specify the app bar part, and we want to say it has a title, and the title is going to say text, and let's just call this word generator. So word generator, so that is going to generate our words, and we also need a body. So we need a body, so the body will be build suggestions. So we're going to be doing it for the build suggestions part. So that is why we did this entire process, and after that all you have to do is end your scaffold. Now in the my app class, update the build method by changing the title and changing the home to be random words. So all you have to do is go to class my app, and we'll be changing a bunch of stuff. So first of all, we need to remove the title and the home, and let's improve the title out here, and let's call it word generator, and we are going to update the home to return random words. Okay, so let's see. So return random words. So as you guys can see, we have simplified our my app part, at least with a lot of widgets that we just created. Okay, so now it is time to restart our app again. So to do that, all you have to do is go and press R out here, and this should do a hot reload. And let's go ahead and look at our app. So as you guys can see, we have an app going out here. So if you scroll out here, you can find a bunch of words that get added. And this is basically our first app that we have created, and this implemented a lot of things. So first of all, we learned how to create a basic app using the Flutter terminal. Then we learned how we can actually go ahead and use the hot reload function, which is pretty nifty in my opinion. Then we also learned how to import external libraries. In this, we use the English word library. We created a stateful widget, we created a stateless widget, and we also added a lazy view and lazy scrolling to our entire applications. Okay guys, so if you guys didn't understand any part of the application, please leave a comment in the comment section below. If you'd like me to actually take out more Flutter related tutorial videos, please also put that down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed actually watching this video, I hope you go ahead and put a thumbs up for us and this video, because it represents better for us on YouTube. Thank you for watching with me and learning Flutter today. I'll meet you guys in the next video. Goodbye.